Hey, Steve. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, Brett Starr.
Any big Halloween plans?
No, just gonna be hanging out and handing out candy. Wait and see what happens around the neighborhood. You go to any Halloween parties this past weekend?
Unfortunately. Oh, my God. I'm like dragging. I've been to a Halloween party every night. It's terrible. Ridiculous. How about you?
Yeah, we have some friends that their house is decorated for Halloween year round. And so, Halloween is like the Super Bowl for them. So we went to their place and didn't disappoint. It was a good
Decorated year round out of zeal, not out of laziness.
No, out of zeal. They are very much in that sort of comic book monster universe kind of thing. So yeah, they brought it, and it was good.
Well, it's that time of year. We have Halloween. We have harvest season, both literally and metaphorically. And we have this convergence of all these crazy sports moments between college football and baseball and the NFL. And the World Cup is actually going to be during the holiday season this year, which I'm really looking forward to. Yeah. And so just a really active time of the year. And I'm curious, you seem like a big Phillies fan based on the most recent internal industry briefing you wrote. Tell us a little bit more about the Phillies and why we should root for them.
We should we should root for the Phillies if we want complete and utter economic devastation, because I've had a long held antipathy toward Philadelphia sports teams. I had a chat with my daughter once about things that she had learned from me, and she only learned two things. One, never let facts get in the way of a good story. And two, fuck the Philadelphia Eagles. So I never thought of myself as that much of a Philadelphia Eagles hater, but there it is. And I think that we can extend that antipathy toward all Philadelphia sports teams, but especially here in this World Series season. There is, I think, a fairly conclusive body of data showing that over the past, say, century, every time a Philadelphia baseball team wins the World Series, economic calamity ensues. So 1929, they won. There was the Great Depression. 1980, they won. There was the, severe recession of the early 1980s. And then 2008, they won, and we had the global financial crisis. So ordinarily, I wouldn't be too concerned because I kind of feel like the Astros are a juggernaut. Mm-hmm. And but after Friday, they rallied from a 5-0 deficit in the late innings and ended up winning. So I think that this is a full-blown crisis, Brett, and I think that we need to respond to it appropriately.
Well, and I just want to add for emphasis, this is not a dilettante's perspective, because in a previous life, you were a sports editor for a major newspaper, a major daily.
Yes. And
I'm just curious, were these all facts that you had at your disposal mentally in that encyclopedic brain of sports trivia? Did you know that going into this, or did you just start to think about it?
Well, no, I already had some hate built up for the Phillies after going to the Cardinals-Phillies wild card series, and the Cardinals had a 2-0 lead going in the ninth in Game 1, and ended up blowing that on the road to summarily being ejected from the postseason. So there's that. Bryce Harper is definitely at the top of my my sports shit list right now, right there with Josh Heupel. So
if anyone needed a reason to tune in and watch the World Series, it's please tune in, root against the Phillies, avoid economic calamity for all of us. It takes a nation.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that I don't have any particular love for the Houston Astros, for falling on the Rangers side of that Texas baseball divide.
Yeah.
But one does what one must need to do in a moment of crisis.
Yeah.
You have to rally around the flag, and that flag happens to be the Houston Astros, unfortunately.
We need to call the Freakonomics team and get them on this situation and, escalate it to the appropriate authorities.
Yeah, I mean, this is some DEFCON 5 shit, Brett.
It really is. It really is.
It really is.
Well, speaking of the season of the World Series and everything else that's going on, crops are still being brought in. Corn is still being harvested across the United States. There's also another kind of harvest season. And this one's a weird one. So we use the phrase harvest season a lot, probably so much that we forget to explain to people what we're talking about when we talk about harvest season in work tech. What's harvest season?
That is when you go out and sell a bunch of stuff and you make bank.
Mm-hmm.
And as Brett and I we've had a long standing, 15-year conversation around seasonal variability in the work tech industry. And I've always fallen on the side of, there's high seasonal variability. And Brett says, no.
Well, to be clear, I'm talking about our own business. Now, there are other businesses in work tech where seasonal variability and harvest season is a real thing, and there's no getting around it. Like if you take the wellness industry, for instance, the Virgin Pulse companies, the Limeade companies, the really big wellness players, their whole year is really made or broken during harvest season because it's tied to benefits and, all kinds of other decisions and annual budget cycles and all that. So, I think the more expensive your solution is, the more it's tied to other organizational goals and cycles inside an organization, the likelihood that there is this period in the fourth quarter and extends a little bit into the first quarter where, all that pre-consideration and consideration from the buyer's perspective that's been building and manifesting over the earlier part of the year, or in some cases, many years in a lot of these categories where solutions, the solution switching rate on average is probably 2 or 3 years for a solution, but there are industries in work tech where it's 7 years or 9 years, really long cycles before people replace large footprint solutions. So a lot of those decisions are made not just over the course of a year, but sometimes the course of 2 years or 3 years. And regardless of when it starts, it usually stops sometime between, a few weeks ago and a few weeks after the end of the year. And so we've been advising people on harvest season strategies for a long time. And it used to be, probably 10 years ago. Harvest season was, because of the state of, MarTech and sales tech and, saturation in the industry, which was pretty low from a marketing perspective. There were lots of marketing opportunities. It was a less sophisticated buyer than it is now. This is the most sophisticated buyer in work tech there ever has been, for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is they've been through the crucible of the pandemic. But from a tech perspective as well, these are the most sophisticated buyers in the history of work tech. And it used to be 10 years ago that you would put together harvest strategy campaigns that were really focused on converting, deals, late in the year when buying activity was at an all-time high. And it doesn't work that way anymore, right? It's like you already have had or haven't had a good harvest season, whether you know it or not, because all the work that was required to make it happen was the entire year leading up to it, and in many cases, the years leading up to, this moment right now. So what have you seen has changed about approaches to, harvest season, or specifically situations where a preponderance of buying activity happens in a few months in a specific time of year?
Yeah, and I think that what we're really seeing right now is that it's been a much more difficult sales season, and I think that the road to success this year is more focused on install base. I think it is increasing share of wallet with current customers rather than capturing net new, because I think that in terms of capturing net new, unless you have already established some early favorite vendor status through brand awareness over the past year or two or three, the idea that you are going to capture mind share and wallet share with those customers right now is negligible. I just don't think it's going to happen. And it really, everything that I'm just kind of, seeing, hearing, reading really is around companies doubling down on how do we get more business out of existing customers.
Yeah, and you've pointed this out several times, and we see it everywhere. Churn is the kind of major issue going on right now because of the number of buyers who are expecting to switch their solutions. You see just more, even as organizations are growing, and their gross retention is going up. If you look at actually what's happening, their churn numbers are higher than ever, but there's also a lot of net new acquisition because the buying activity has increased. But when you say it's a difficult buying environment, it is difficult, but it's strange. It's just strange because it's like week to week and month to month. It'll go up one month, it'll go down another month. It's, just the undulations of uncertainty, have really increased significantly in a shorter period of time.
Well, I think that also it's just like it depends on how much exposure you have to specific industry sectors. So, if you look at a lot of work tech solutions, especially in sort of the talent and engagement areas that really they make hay with selling into essentially knowledge work industries. Right now, that is not a very fertile ground for sales because you're seeing a lot of belt tightening, you're seeing a lot of layoffs, and it's just like trying to sell into that right now. I don't envy anyone that. If you're in talent acquisition, it's still a pretty competitive hiring environment, especially if you're looking at service sector jobs. If you're looking at, healthcare continues to be, difficult from a hiring environment. So I think that there are different industry sectors that are proving more resistant to some of the macroeconomic dynamics. But I think that by and large, a lot of brands in work tech are definitely seeing, their cost of customer acquisition going up. They're seeing longer sales cycles. They're seeing, more close lost, no decision, close lost, hitting pause than they were in, say, 2021.
Yeah, I've often felt that the work tech, especially as the work tech segment grows and becomes just much more diverse, and there's so many more vendors out there and so much more representation at the highest levels in the market, that we often get caught up in tech investment trends that aren't necessarily like a one-to-one connection with what's going on in work tech, but increasingly that just doesn't matter anymore because as work tech is seen as part of the broader tech sector. Then people start to engage in the same strategies, that you see some of the other tech sectors that, in some respects some of them are much more consumer oriented. Some of them are much more this or that or the other. And they don't track one-to-one with, our perception of what work tech is, but it just doesn't matter anymore because we're playing at a level where it kind of all gets swept up into one basket. And that's going to have an impact on organizations no matter what. But it is an opportunity to kind of pick apart a little bit what harvest season means, because on the one hand, harvest season and harvest season strategies used to be specifically about a set of activities over a short period of time that were meant to help convert on, opportunities that you have at hand and maybe even steal a few from, other organizations where they were established as early favorite vendors. But when you think about what harvest, implies, it implies that that's the time that you make good on all the work that you've done the rest of the year, right? Excuse me. Man, these Halloween allergies. No, I think probably. But it's a time when you we're basically, I won't say cashing in, but cashing in on, all of the hard work that you've done, through the rest of the year and at the end of the previous year, et cetera. And that, I think, is a much more accurate view of harvest season. But I kind of don't want to even use the phrase anymore because it is so tied to this notion of a short burst of activity near the end of the buying cycle. Yeah. And that has really, gone away as just the entire field of work techs, their ability to have like blocking and tackling down. Like you can't compete anymore on just having, really good blocking and tackling and sales and marketing or whatever. Right. You have to have like this holistic year-round approach to customer experience, which sweeps up brand and marketing and sales and product and customer success. And I think that, one of the outcomes inevitably that happens, and this is why you see the stuff in like 2 or 3 year cycles, if somebody doesn't, if an organization doesn't have the results during quote harvest season that they expected, their response is often to pull back on marketing budgets, which ironically, sets up another bad result for the following year.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of thoughts on that because we just have gotten in our work tech industry outlook survey with responses from more than 700 industry professionals on kind of what the expectation is, and it's really enlightening because I mean some of it is just these are the trends you could almost predict based on the data that we always kind of see. And so what's interesting this year is, fast growth companies, the companies that are reporting 50% or more year over year growth, was like half of what it was last year. Mm-hmm. But overall, it's just like, the number of growing companies versus companies that are flat or decreasing in growth or is off almost 20%. And the number of companies that are reporting flat growth is just sort of off the charts. Mm-hmm. But when you break down the companies that are growing and look at the differences in what they're doing, it's a shock. They're investing in sales and marketing more so than companies, the growing companies, more so than the ones that are flat or not growing. And so I think that what you're going to see a lot of sales and marketing leaders have to go and defend their budgets this year more so than I think in any year in probably since the financial crisis. Mm-hmm. And I think that there are going to be a lot of work tech brands that make penny wise and pound foolish decisions in terms of that investment. I also think that there's going to be, I think that there's never been, a clearer data set that demonstrates that companies that need to move to a CX model now more so than ever, just because we're not in that fast growth environment anymore where you can count on net new logo acquisition. I think that the companies that grow next year are the ones that are going to expand share of wallet with existing customers. And I think that the ones that do that are going to have more of a holistic CX strategy, because if you're just depending on your customer success function to expand and grow, share of wallet in the absence of any collaboration with sales and marketing, I think that you're just whistling past the graveyard.
Well, that's a great point. I mean, we had some recent experience with this. We're doing some analysis on a company with a functional association problem, a company who's to remain nameless, but we were looking at functional association. And so, thinking about functional association in the context of a CX-oriented company versus a siloed company. Typically, if we look at brand, for instance, brand experience as a singular pillar, the measures of brand and brand success are pretty well known. They're brand recognition, functional association, and brand attributes. Where brand recognition, of course, is just how many people know you exist. Functional association is knowing what you do. So, hey, I know who that company is, but do I know all the stuff that they do for a living? And then brand attributes are knowing what you're like. Are you an innovative organization? Are you a pragmatic, trustworthy organization? Et cetera, et cetera. And we were talking about an organization that had a functional association issue. And the knee-jerk response is always, okay, well, that's something that needs to be handled through brand advertising or through the marketing experience or something like that. But when we were looking at it in terms of a holistic approach to CX, and we said, okay, what's going on in brand? What's going on in marketing? What's going on in sales? What's going on in product? And what's going on in customer success, right? Where the idea is that functional association was key to increasing share of wallet by exposing people to other products or services that were delivered by this company. We just did a quick analysis and said, okay, if our goal is to make sure that people know what this organization does for a living, how many times are they actually told over the course of a 1 or 2 year relationship? And, in brand, there wasn't a lot of communication around, hey, this is what we do for a living. These are all the things that we do. In marketing, there was not a real strong, focus on functional association. And then in sales, where the preponderance of functional association was established, it was one slide in the first, sales presentation. It's like, here's all the stuff that we do, but this is what we're talking about around how we're going to work together. So let's narrow in the conversation on that. And then when the onboarding process happens and they get into the product, the product is isolated from other, components of the product that are delivered. And customer success often found that when they were having conversations about people 6 months, a year into, an engagement, that the folks that they were working with frequently had very little understanding of the other products and services that were delivered. And so here's an example where you say functional association, in order to grow share of wallet and in order to expand the relationships we have with our existing customers. They already know who we are, brand recognition's high because we're working with them. They probably know what we're like from a brand attribute perspective. But on a functional association perspective, their entire understanding of all the stuff that we do is like boiled down to one slide in a sales presentation. That's not, an opportunity to improve functional association that you pursue, one time in one pillar of the customer experience. You have to look at all the subdomains of customer experience and say, how do we increase functional association or brand advertising? How do we do it in marketing? How do we expand it in sales? How do we look at our product and make sure that there are off ramps and on ramps to, the other products that we sell? And then how do we structure a customer success engagement so that there is a constant, understanding of where you are in the product catalog and the other places that you could go to solve, other issues or pursue other opportunities that organization has. And clearly that's something that you don't do in one campaign. You don't do a little bit here. You don't do a little bit there. It's something that you have to, address in all subdomains of customer experience over a long period of time to expect to have an outcome. And if you're in a situation where, you basically didn't have the results during, quote, a harvest season that you wanted, and your response to that is to pull back on, marketing, or in this case, CX, then you're just delaying your ability to actually have an impact on that situation because it takes a long time to get the result that you want. And I'm wondering what. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was curious what your response is to the notion that not many folks out there are looking at issues or opportunities across all of the subdomains of CX in a holistic way, as opposed to this very reflexive, like, here's the problem, here's where we're going to fix it, and we're going to do this one thing. Are you seeing a growing level of understanding and acceptance that all of these things kind of work together in the CX?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I have no doubt that most companies in work tech aren't focused on, a truly strategic CX framework in terms of pursuing a growth strategy. And I mean, what was really interesting, like one of the key takeaways for me out of the research that we did was when you looked at, companies that were not growing, like the main emphasis of their sales and marketing mix was really around net new logo acquisition and like paid media and all of the activities were more focused around traditional inbound marketing, net new logo acquisition, rather than focusing on, outbound and clear customer retention and clear expansion of wallet.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's just the data is there that coming into this year, coming into 2023, if your focus is we're going to be following the same playbook that we did during the growth years of we're just going to be throwing money out there and we're going to get net new customers, you're basically hitting the accelerator and driving right for the wall.
Yeah, and we often talk about it in terms of like this 2-motion model that has really taken over the past 5 years or so, which a lot of it's driven by MarTech models and stuff like that. But it's this notion of connect and convert, and convert, drive a lead. That's the connection. Now we've got their name, we can market to them and other channels and everything, and then convert them into a sales opportunity as quickly as possible. We believe in more of a 4-motion process, which is connect, engage, convert, and then expand. And really, if you think about connect and convert, the prevalent model, that's all rooted in sales and marketing. If you think about connect, engage, convert, and expand, that's more of a CX approach around how every, kind of subdomain of CX, every functional area in your organization has a role to play in terms of not just viewing, net new logo generation as an assembly line approach or a funnel or a slide or whatever, but thinking more about the merry-go-round of, people getting on or getting off your customer experience wherever they want in a random and chaotic way. And really every interaction that they have with your organization has to drive towards your primary business goals and the vision that you have as an organization. Even if sometimes initially it feels like, isn't this really a marketing function, or isn't this really a sales function, or isn't this a customer success function? Because when I see, is that even for, organizations that are trying to implement a customer experience framework, a lot of that is starting in product and customer success, and that's great. But there's no one from sales and marketing at the table. And I'd say the opposite is also true. You do have some organizations that are approaching CX from, a brand and marketing and sales perspective, but there's no one from product or customer success at the table. And that's where these breaks in continuity get created, where, you've got this vision that is, coming from brand and marketing and sales that's fundamentally out of touch with what is, happening in, product and customer success. And so I don't really, I think that we are in a new organizing principle where new leaders are going to emerge over the next 5 years. And a lot of leaders are going to give up a lot of market share. And I really do believe that, the folks who gain ground against competitors are going to be ones who understand the limitations of the existing paradigm in just kind of a sales driven model or a marketing driven model or a, product and customer success driven model. And the future belongs to those organizations that are looking at everything holistically and looking at the opportunities that they can pursue or the issues that need to be fixed, not just within the obvious domain that they seem to emerge from, but, in all the connected subdomains of CX. Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think ever run into an issue in any one of the domains of CX that is not connected to an issue or a problem in another domain. If you've got a problem with brand, it could very well be connected to a sales or marketing issue, could be very well connected to what's going on with your current, customer success or lack thereof, and your customers' advocacy or lack thereof. Mm-hmm. And all over the spectrum, these are, and, it's connected to the product. Is your product meeting the sort of the expectations of what the market wants or deems sort of MVP for a particular product, and then how does that manifest kind of across the stack? These problems are always interlocking and interrelated, but more often than not, they are treated as an issue within one of these domains that we don't want to cross over. We don't want to start pulling at those threads. And it's just like, I don't think that WorkTech brands have the luxury of treating these as silos any longer.
No, and just in closing, as an example, the Star Conspiracy has a lot of brand recognition in WorkTech. We're really, well known. Most people probably associate our brand with the work that we've done with them. So I think we're most broadly known as kind of like a branding firm or a marketing firm. There's not a lot of recognition for the fact that, we're kind of this weird mashup of analysts and consultants and, marketing professionals who actually span all of the subdomains of CX into sales and to product and to customer success. And this is where I think the state of the industry is based on my own experience. When somebody comes to us with what they perceive to be a brand problem or opportunity, or a marketing problem or opportunity, early in the engagement, we try to get representation from sales and product and customer success into the planning sessions, into the initial strategy work, et cetera. And there's a lot of resistance to that. And I wouldn't say it's like, no, we don't want to bother people or whatever. I think there's just like an intellectual resistance to what value could be added by a bunch of people who are outside, or perceived as being outside of the, the areas that they want to focus on. And then we get into the research phase. So we always, start with strategy, go to research, then we, create the stuff that we're creating, whatever it is. And then there's a validation stage, an activation stage, and, a measurement stage. But in the research stage, we're frequently interviewing a lot of people inside the organization, outside the organization, et cetera. And that's the first time that we're getting, exposure to, the product folks and the customer success folks, et cetera. And usually 2 or 3 months into the work, then these people start showing up to the table because it becomes so obvious how interconnected it is. And so my view is that people don't start with the perception that what they're trying to achieve is rooted deeply in customer experience right now, but they get there a lot faster than they used to. And I really look forward to, that moment, probably a year from now or 2 years from now, where, people approach us and say, we need to rebrand our organization, or, we need a whole new approach to the marketing experience. And so we want to bring our customer success people, our product people, our sales people, our marketing people, and our brand people all to the table so that we can formulate the strategy together. When that starts moving to the front end of, kind of an opportunity assessment or an issues assessment, then I'll feel a lot better that, the industry as a whole is making progress towards, more of a holistic frame for problem solving and opportunity pursuit within WorkTech and customer experience.
Yeah, and I think 2023 is going to be a watershed year in that regard.
Yeah.
Just because, we've seen it, play out time and time again in, successful engagements with, growth companies. Your key insights are coming from your customer success team. When we develop a winning message or position or zero in on an ideal customer profile, it is always with the benefit of heaps of insightful customer research. And
yeah.
And there's, I think that there is, an unwillingness with a lot of brands to really kind of like face some of the brutal facts that come up from, that customer input, because it's like, yeah, your product sucks. You don't have this functionality. Your UX is terrible. And, or it's just like, you're not getting your customer success in the first 90 days. There's lots of issues that it's easier just to say, let's just throw some more money at demand gen and get more net new. And we don't want to like try to figure out that stuff's too hard. You don't have the luxury of doing that anymore.
Well, and so that's one big message that I'd like to get across is, I think a lot of people, to your point, feel that, cracking the egg open on customer experience, as opposed to, having a functional focus on the 1 or 2 areas where they think their biggest issues or opportunities are, is overly complex. and we just don't have the time or resources for that right now. And, this is not a scientific number. This is just kind of, my gut level reaction. I would say 10% progress in customer experience outweighs 100% progress in marketing or 100% progress in product alone, because it just gets you into the mindset of solving these problems holistically and seeing a single thread that runs through everything. That's actually becomes much easier to wrap your mind around than, okay, we've maxed out what we think we can do in marketing. So our only solution is to try to get, as close to 100% blocking and tackling success as possible. And so you spend all your time tweaking these little things for diminishing returns versus the one thing or the two things that you could do throughout the entire, customer experience domain that would have a huge transformative impact. And, I keep saying the last thing, but the last thing is, over and over and over again, I see organizations that say they have a problem in sales and they have a problem in customer success, right? And brand's doing great, marketing's doing great, and the product is great, right? And the reality is when you look at what's going on in sales 9 out of 10 times, or what's going on in customer success 9 out of 10 times, it's neither a sales issue with the people process or whatever, nor is it a customer success issue. It's really the gaps or the breaks in continuity that exist between what brand and marketing are telling the world, what the product actually does, sales getting caught between a rock and a hard place, and then behavioral economics kick in and salespeople need to hit their numbers. So they start to close the gap in a narrative fashion between what brand and marketing are saying and what product actually does. And you get all these deals being thrown over the fence to, customer success. And customer success becomes a triage job of spending most of your time with unhappy customers simply because of the gap between their expectations and what they actually got, as opposed to working on that expand function, increasing that share of wallet, and increasing the depth of relationship. And inherently, brand's not doing a bad job, marketing's not doing a bad job, sales isn't doing a bad job, the product is not bad, customer success isn't bad. It's just that they're not all operating from the same vision, and they're not focused on eliminating breaks in continuity between those different subdomains of experience. And that ends up a lot of times tracking back to, oh, you've got a sales issue, but the sales issue really starts in brand and marketing. And it's not about, those folks getting better. It's just about everyone getting on the same page.
Well, and and our research bore that out. It's just like the biggest issues that WorkTech brands are facing right now are not even macroeconomic ones or external pressures. It's lack of internal alignment. Some of that is lack of sales and marketing alignment, which those are, if you're not aligned, and we see this very often, if you're not aligned with sales and marketing to the groups that need to function together, you shouldn't be surprised that you're seeing kind of broad-based lack of alignment within your team. It's just like, but now the pressures of that lack of alignment have just gotten acute.
Well, and 10 years ago, just getting sales and marketing aligned was like a panacea or perceived as a panacea, right? And that's just table stakes now. Like having marketing aligned with sales is just table stakes. The question becomes are brand marketing and sales aligned with product and customer success? And is there a through line all the way through the customer experience? So, I think a lot of people feel like they're going to solve everything by just getting sales and marketing aligned. And that's a good start, but aligned to what? So if sales and marketing end up being aligned, but that's completely out of alignment with product and customer success, you still have a big problem.
Yeah. And furthermore, it's just the, if, marketing leaders who are listening to this only take one thing away from this conversation, it's just like you have the responsibility to drive forward this conversation, your organization. The head of marketing really should be the chief customer officer, because the head of marketing is typically the only one that is has visibility into the full spectrum of everything from the first brand touch to, the 3-year renewal. And it's just like, sales and marketing has to drive this forward, because if they do not drive forward alignment in 2023, they do not drive forward this conversation and really kind of, break down those silos, they're going to be the ones whose heads are going to be on the block first. It's just
Yeah.
like you're not going to hit your numbers if you're not looking at growth from a holistic CX perspective.
Yeah,
Period.
we're not the only ones saying this. I mean, all
Right.
the big consulting houses are basically saying you need a customer experience officer, a chief customer officer, and the person who has or the people who have the skill sets, because it's primarily a storytelling function. It's a marketing function, are coming out of marketing. So your chief marketing officer really becomes the person who's responsible and best equipped for driving that kind of holistic orientation towards CX. So it is both a great career move, but to your point, it's also a burning building. So, all right, man. Well, I hope you enjoy Halloween this evening. I thought y'all were more of a turn the porch light off and put a box.
No, I love handing out candy. I love it when kids come. St. Louis has this thing where it's just like you come to the front door, the kid has to tell a joke.
Oh,
you don't just hand out candy; you got to have a joke.
Oh.
And so I'm getting ready for an onslaught of really terrible jokes, as well as hopefully giving away all the candy very quickly so I can turn off the porch light.
There you go. Maybe you should get the old gong out, from the Gong Show. Anyway. All right. Well, it's good talking to you. Look forward to catching up again next week.
Thanks, Brett.
Bye, Steve.
Bye.